Hi, it's Juliet. Welcome back to my studio. Today I'm going to show you how to make these really cute octopus beads. We get a chance to use up some of the fun frit you might have lying around. And I'm going to show you a cute marvering technique to be able to make their tentacles look like they're flowing in the ocean currents. The kids are going to love them.
Okay, so here's a diagram of the jellyfish bead we're going to be making. On the left will be a cap in clear that's going to be covered with colored frit. Beneath that will be an opaque white rim, and to the right side will be a conical shaped clear portion that we will apply white stringer for the tentacles.
So we're going to start by adding some clear. Make a small bead on our mandrel. This is going to become the head or the cap of the jellyfish. And we're going to be applying some frit to it. Now you have to make sure when you're using frit for beads of courage that it's not a metallic or reduction frit, because those aren't safe for the kids. But any kind of intense color, colored glass, or you can even use a transparent color if you'd like instead of frit and clear. So basically I'm just winding on a bead size amount of clear, and then I'm going to be rolling it into some frit. For this, I'm using a glass diversions frit called Pacific Harbor. Okay, so we're going to melt our glass in a little bit and get the outer surface hot, and then we're going to roll it in some frit. Now, on the left side of my mandrel is going to be the top of the jellyfish, and towards the right is where we're going to put the legs. So when we put the frit on it, we want to put it around the sides and towards the top, and not put so much on the bottom. We're going to be putting some opaque white there. So once I get the glass melted in, I'll turn my flame up a little bit here, we will be dipping into the frit jar. Now I like to let the glass harden a little bit, because then when I dip in the frit, it's less likely to distort and change my shape. So I'm going to take that out of the flame for a little bit and let the glass harden up. You can test it by listening for the ting. If you tap it on metal or on a marver, you can kind of hear the sound it makes when it's solid. So now what we're going to do is reheat the glass bead a bit and just have the top millimeter. Now I have this angled, so I am getting the top and the edges softened, and the bottom part on the right is not getting softened as much. That way when I go into my frit bowl, I'm able to pick up the glass without attaching it to that bottom part as much. Now I'm going to melt that frit in. You'll notice when I went into my little au jus bowl and dipped it to pick up my frit, I had a little bit of a mountain there, and I was coming at it from the back side so that I applied the frit to the top and the wide part. Alright, so now what we're going to do is going to add a ring of opaque white around the bottom. And this is going to be a nice landing part for our tendrils. It'll add a visual thing that you can see the frit against. So it just adds a lot of interest, detail to the bead, makes it look a little more realistic. So I'm taking a commercial stringer, I'm just melting a little bit, and I'm going to just put a circle of opaque white just around the base of the glass. I'm going to go around once or twice, build up a little bit of glass there. Next, what I'm going to do is heat it from the right side. So I'm just heating that rim of glass, and then I'm going to use my marvering pad here and just kind of push that down flat. So what we're going to end up with is a ring of opaque white. And when you look through the top, you have that opaque white, and you can actually see the frit through it much more effectively. Next, we're going to build up the clear base that's going to support our tendrils. Now, if you can see in the diagram over here, it's going to be narrower by the head, and it's going to flare out into something of a cone shape. And those tendrils are going to rest on that clear part and make it look like they're floating in the water. So what we want to do is get our mandrel hot and get a bit of a gather in our clear, and then touch down and kind of ooch it up so it just touches the white. And then we're going to put a good bit of heat in this to make sure that is fused really well against that opaque white. I'm not too worried at this point about a bead hole pucker on the right side because we're going to be adding a bunch more glass there. But for now, I want to make sure that's melted in and fused pretty well. You know, let that cool off a little bit. Okay, so we want to continue building that up. You don't want to go quite as wide as the outer diameter of the white. You want to stay a little bit less than that, right up against the head of the jellyfish. But then you want to build it up more towards the right side. So I'm going to get a bit of a gather, and we will start building up our cone shape to support the tendrils coming off the jellyfish. Now, as always, if your mandrel is hot, when you put the glass on it, you're less likely to get bubbles. So I tend to, preheat it, and it turns a little bit orange before I apply the clear. It's just right ahead of where I'm applying it. I'm going to go back and just add a bit more glass. I'm trying to build up that conical shape. I'm going to go back in and add a little bit more glass as well between the head of the jellyfish and where the tendrils begin. That's going to be a weak spot if you're not careful. And when you're getting them off the mandrel, if you're not careful, it could break there. So you need to make sure you have a fair amount of glass so that there's a good join and they're sturdy, because, remember, these are kids and they can be a little rough on things. Okay, so now I'm going to add some heat to this, and then I'm going to marver it into this conical shape. You can use a marvering pad, a stump shaper, or a brass pad like I have over here. My brass pad is simply a block of brass about 1/4 inch thick sitting on top of a candlestick holder I got at a craft store. It's kind of handy because you don't need to hold it or anything. Okay, now that the base of my tendrils is built up, I'm going to attach the legs of the jellyfish. And for this, I'm going to use opaque white. So I have an opaque white stringer that I already pulled. You can also use filigrana that you have pulled into stringers. That'll give you even a finer one, and you could probably fit more in there. But I'll just use a regular plain white stringer for now. So the way I like to do this is get the tip of the stringer hot. It'll make a little bit of a blob, but you can anchor it right in that bit of opaque white at the base of the jellyfish head, and it'll just disappear in there. So it makes it really easy. And I want to just go straight down and a little bit past the crest of my cone. And I just add a bunch of these the whole way around. And you can add as many or as few as you want, depending on the thickness of your stringer and where they kind of go. You want to put them in sort of parallel because we're going to be doing a little trick to kind of impart a bit of a water flow to make it look like they're all flowing together in the ocean. So for now, we're going to put them down more or less parallel. You'll see that length of stringer, I've gone through quite a bit of it. So you may want to pull several long stringers and one last one in there. Okay. So next thing I want to do is heat those ends in a bit. So I've turned my rod, so I'm applying the heat to the end of the bead. Add a little bit more bead, heat to the head of my bead. And now I want to get in there where those little blobs were, where I started each of those tendrils, and add some heat so that they melt in and fuse pretty good. We want to keep that definition between the head and the tendril. So to do that, I'm going to marver it a little bit, but I'm going to use the curved side of my stump shaper. There's a wide curve and a narrow curve. You can use whichever one you want. And it looks like one of my tendrils separated a little bit. You see it sticking out there. So I'm going to go in there, heat this, take my stringer and kind of pull it down and attach it right back to the head. There we go. Sometimes it's hard to see the white because it turns clear when it's hot. So you got to kind of watch it carefully, find out the spot where it is, and then pull it up. Okay, so the next step is we want to have the tendrils look like they're kind of flowing in unison. So what we're going to do is heat up a section of this and marver it in one direction. And if you use a brass marver, that grabs the glass a little bit more, so it will pull the whole surface around in one direction a bit. So to do that, you need to heat it up until the white turns clear and then keep going a little bit because you want the base glass under it to also move. You don't want to just smear the white tendrils. So you want to heat it a little ways, and then we're going to marver a portion of it, not the whole thing, on my little stump shaper here. So I'm going to go in one direction, and that heat and the brass marvering pad will sort of grab it. I don't know if you can see that. It sort of pulled them away. All right, add a bit of heat, melt that in. Don't forget to keep your top warm. So next we're going to heat up a little bit less. So the first time I heated up probably 2/3 of that. Now I'm only going to heat up like the last third of it. And I'm going to marver in the other direction. So the first time I twisted the top towards me. Next time I'm going to twist the top away from me in the opposite direction, and that will make the tendrils flow back in the other direction. Okay, so let me heat up this base, and again you want to heat it up enough so that the white disappears and then keep going for a little while. Now remember what direction I'm twisting it, the top away from me this time, and the brass grabs it. May need to heat it and marver it a little bit more, depending on how much it moved and how much heat you got in it. And again, you only want to marver the tip. Even if it's heated a little bit further to the left, only marver the tip. All right, we can straighten that up a bit. Give it a little bit of a heat back. Smooth out my chill marks, a little bit of heat in the cap. Now when it turns white, you can see that all the tendrils are sort of moving in the same direction, so it looks like it's just being carried by the current. All right, and there we have a jellyfish ready to go into the kiln.
Well, that wraps up the tutorial for these cute little jellyfish beads. Thanks for watching, guys, and as always, please be sure to hit that subscribe button and check out the rest of the videos on the Lampwork with Juliet playlist.